Good evening. My name is Valerie Cordero, and I am Co-Executive Director of Families for Depression Awareness. We are glad that you have joined us for our webinar, Recognizing and Managing Teen Anxiety. As of today, over 1,400 people have registered, and another 200 are going to watch the webinar in groups. These numbers indicate that this is a topic that is at the forefront of the minds and hearts of parents and caring adults all across the country. Toward the end of the program, we will have time for questions and answers. We'll be pulling questions both from registration forms and from those asked during the live webinar. If you'd like to submit a question, use the question panel on your screen. We will answer as many as we can. You can get a handout of the slides by downloading the PDF file at the top of your screen. I encourage you to fill out the online evaluation after the webinar. As thanks, you will be entered to win one of 4 publications by tonight's expert presenter. Please explore our website where you can find a downloadable teen depression fact sheet in English and Spanish, tips for supporting a person with depression, and information about how you can get involved with Families for Depression Awareness. If you are a mental health clinician or other related specialist, we welcome you. Please note, however, that this webinar is designed for the general public. If you find our content to be helpful, please forward the link to your friends, family members, patients, school personnel, or anyone who you think would benefit. The recorded webinar will be available for viewing through our website for a limited time. Finally, we hope you will help us reach more families and help more teens by making a tax-deductible contribution to Families for Depression Awareness. Now, let's review the agenda. So, as part of my continuing introduction, I will discuss the links between depression and anxiety. Then I will give the majority of our time over to our expert presenter, Lisa Schab. Lisa will cover the signs and symptoms of anxiety and will spend a good deal of time going over anxiety management strategies that are recommended for teens. Lisa will provide a lot of excellent information, so if you haven't already, get a piece of paper out, get a pen, get your laptop, and get ready to take some notes. If you need any clarification on the strategies that she mentions, you can submit a question, and again, we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. Lisa will also discuss how adults can help teens who are dealing with anxiety and treatment options that are available. We will close out with a brief discussion of Families for Depression Awareness and our Q&A. So, as we prepare to hear this wealth of information that Lisa has to offer, I'd like to affirm that just by listening to this webinar, you are doing your part to address teen depression. There was a really interesting study that came out this year, and researchers looked at a group of about 400 teens that were 13 to 17 years old who had suicidal ideation and some had actually made suicide attempts and had been hospitalized. And they looked at this group of teens and asked them to identify an adult, a trusted adult who would receive psychoeducation about depression, suicide prevention, and other related topics. What this study found was that just by having that trusted adult receive psychoeducation and check-ins, these teens were more likely to be alive 11 to 14 years later. So we just want to reiterate to you that education about mental health matters, and it's really, really good that you're on this webinar today to learn about anxiety in teens. So I want to start, again, this is part of the introduction, by reminding you that if you want more information about teen depression, you can access an archived webinar that we have called Understanding Teen Depression. And it's a really good 101 that goes over teen depression, communication strategies, and other topics that will be informative for you. We are addressing anxiety tonight because of its strong correlation with depression. Nearly 75% of children who live with depression also have an anxiety disorder, and most are not getting the help they need. More than half of children with depression and 80% of those with an anxiety disorder are not getting treatment. This could be for any number of reasons, from stigma to lack of access to care, to lack of culturally competent care. But the point is that we really need more adults to understand these issues in order to help teens and in order to open up the lines of communication about depression and anxiety. So, with no further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the evening. Lisa M. Schab, licensed clinical social worker, is a psychotherapist and author of 18 self-help books for children, teens, and adults, including Put Your Worries Here, a creative journal for teens with anxiety, and the international bestsellers, The Anxiety Workbook for Teens and The Self-Esteem Workbook for Teens. Lisa's professional training courses are available for continuing education credits through Professional Development Resources, which is pdresources.com. She has been interviewed for articles appearing in the New York Times, Scholastic Choices Magazine, Teen Vogue, among others. She has also authored regular columns on tweens and teens for Chicago Parent Magazine and Healthy Families for Sun newspapers. Lisa holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Northwestern University and a master's degree in clinical social work from Loyola University Chicago. Lisa maintains a private counseling practice in the greater Chicago area. More information about Lisa is available at lisamschabooks.com, and we're going to have that URL open later for you all to see. So, Lisa, welcome. Glad to have you, and we're going to give it to you.
Hi, Valerie. Thank you so much. I appreciate your inviting me to share in this webinar tonight. I think that anything we can do to help teens find emotional stability is so important, especially today with such a high level of both anxiety and depression being diagnosed in teens as well as the general population. I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience, whether you're a parent, grandparent, legal guardian, helping professional, or any other adult who cares about a teen in their life. Because as Valerie said, the more you educate yourself, the better equipped you are to help that teenager. But to start out, I'd like to briefly differentiate between average anxiety and a clinical diagnosis. This difference is mainly how the extremity of the anxiety is felt and how debilitating it is. So, for example, an average anxiety experience for a teen might be feeling nervous before a first date, or before an oral presentation, or for trying out for a play. Maybe they have sweaty palms, or they have butterflies in their stomach. That's kind of an average anxiety feeling that most teens have at some time. A clinical diagnosis is more extreme, more pervasive, and more debilitating. This would be maybe a teen who won't even accept a date, who won't even go to school on the day of their oral presentation, or who isn't involved in any extracurricular activities because their anxiety prevents it. So average anxiety can feel uncomfortable or annoying, but the teen gets through it. Clinical diagnoses actually interfere in the teen's daily life, either socially, with school, work, or in other relationships. So the good news about anxiety is that it's very common and it's very treatable. In fact, it's the most common emotional disorder we treat. The reason we're happy that it's common, we're not happy it's out there so much, but because it's common, we've got a lot of information and a lot of research on it. And this has helped us develop a wide variety and a vast amount of anxiety management techniques. Most of the techniques I'm going to describe to you today are those that a therapist would use when working with a teen in their office. However, this does not mean that's the only way they can be learned. Many of these are techniques that you can learn yourself and you can help your teen with. In addition, one of the best ways for you to help your teen is to use and model these techniques yourself. This is one of the most effective ways that our kids learn anything from us is through modeling. But don't be afraid to let your teen see you experience and manage your own anxiety in a healthy way. When you do this, you teach them that anxiety is a normal part of people's life and it's possible to handle it. This empowers them, and this helps alleviate their anxiety about feeling anxiety. Before we move into signs of anxiety, I'd like to make a note that because many anxiety symptoms can also be symptoms of physical illness, it's always a good idea to check them out with a medical doctor first. That being said, anxiety symptoms are broad and varied and can last anywhere from a few seconds to a few hours. Also, the duration and type of symptoms may change from one day to the next. Teens can experience both physical and mental signs of anxiety. Physically, anxiety can be felt just about anywhere in their bodies. Most common signs are probably perspiration, mild nausea, or butterflies in the stomach, and racing or pounding heart. But symptoms can also range from excessive yawning or belching to chest pain or headaches or even acne. Mentally, some common signs of anxiety might be excessive worry, memory loss, trouble focusing, or experience a feeling of dread or disconnectedness. When you understand the symptoms, you can help your teen relieve some anxiety simply by explaining that these symptoms are normal signs of anxiety, not something even worse happening to them. And anxiety can be managed, and the symptoms will pass. Treating anxiety, I talk about both prevention and intervention. I tell teens that prevention is something we do ahead of time, like brushing our teeth. We don't wait until we have a cavity to brush our teeth. We do it every day to prevent getting cavities. Likewise, if we practice activities that lower our anxiety every day, then when a crisis situation comes along, we're starting at a lower level and our anxiety doesn't flare up as high. Intervention is something we do at the moment of crisis to help us lower our anxiety while it's flaring up. Most of the techniques I talk about today can be used for both prevention and intervention. For example, a teen could practice meditation, deep breathing, writing in a journal, using positive affirmations, or walking in nature every day as prevention. And they could also use any of these as intervention at the time of crisis. I also talk to teens about using an anxiety scale, which can help them recognize the intensity of their anxiety so they can better understand their anxiety triggers and their patterns. I ask teens to rate their anxiety on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 low, 10 high, whenever they're experiencing it. If I'm teaching them an anxiety management technique in my office, I ask them to rate their anxiety both before and after they try the technique. This helps us know how effective the technique was for them. You might try checking in with your own anxiety level right now. Think about what number you would give yourself at this moment. Then check it again later or sometime tomorrow, and notice how your anxiety level varies from situation to situation. Teens really seem to like this 1 to 10 scale. They come to me with it later, whether it's about anxiety or something else that they're feeling. So it's something that they grasp onto pretty easily, and it's a good language for them. When introducing anxiety management techniques, I ask teens, do you think and do you breathe? And so far, none of them has ever said no. And so I explain, if you think and if you breathe, you're already using two of the most powerful tools you have for managing anxiety, your breath and your thoughts. And what's really helpful for teens, especially about these tools, is that they've got them both with them all the time. They don't have to remember to pack them, they can't leave them on the bus or get them lost in their rooms, and they don't even cost anything. So first, let's talk about our breath. Our breath sets the tone for our body. If a teen is anxious, they're usually breathing more shallowly and more rapidly. They're relaxed, they're breathing more slowly and more deeply. We breathe more slowly and deeply, bring more oxygen into our body. This helps release tension from our muscles, and it also brings more oxygen to our brains. More oxygen in a teen's brain means they can think more clearly, and then they're able to use their thoughts to manage anxiety too. So by consciously slowing and deepening their breath, teens can start to lower their anxiety level right away all by themselves. I'm going to describe a few specific exercises for working with our breath. First and most basic is simply to take a breath, like this. You can try this right now and see what I mean. The minute we take one conscious breath, we slow the metronome. So this can always be the first course of action with anxiety. Take one conscious breath. This works well with teens because it's simple and immediate. There's not much to remember, and no one even has to know that you're doing it. Another basic technique that can work well with teens is following their breath. This involves first locating the breath, just paying attention to it, noticing where it goes. Try this right now too. Just notice where your breath is, body, as you inhale. You might find it in your nostrils, your mouth, your throat, your lungs, or maybe even deeper. And once you find it, you just pay attention and follow where it goes in your body as you breathe in and out. And there is no right or wrong answer to this. But what happens when we do this is that we automatically begin to slow and deepen our breath. We also take our mind off whatever's raising our anxiety because we're focusing on our breath, and that lowers our anxiety level as well. The next breathing technique listed here is abdominal breathing. That's where we imagine our abdomen as a deflated balloon. When we inhale, our goal is to bring oxygen all the way down into our abdomen and inflate that balloon. And when we exhale, we want to completely deflate that balloon first, and then push the air back up through our chest, throat, and out of our mouth or nose before we take our next breath. This exercise, along with all the others, should be done with gentleness and acceptance. You don't want to try too hard or attempt to do it perfectly, because this will make our anxiety level go even higher. And this is something you really want to reiterate with your teen, that any technique they try to relieve anxiety should be done with openness and curiosity, or what we call beginner's mind. We need to be accepting of ourselves and our attempts in these activities, as in all other areas of our lives, because it's the unrealistically high expectations and harsh criticisms that contribute to high anxiety to begin with. This next slide shows an example of a breathing exercise from the book Put Your Worries Here, a creative journal for teens with anxiety. This prompt suggests the teen simply breathe peacefully while you're using a pencil or other writing utensil to start anywhere on the page and randomly connect the dots. This simple but focused activity helps them consciously slow and deepen their breath, and at the same time takes their mind off of whatever is raising their anxiety level. The absence of rules about a right or wrong outcome also helps them to relax. Their breathing pattern can begin to change in just a few moments. So we can use our breath for both prevention and intervention. Examples of prevention would be maybe sitting for a few minutes every day and just focusing on breathing peacefully, or doing a breathing exercise, following our breath. It could also mean the teen sets the intention of taking one conscious breath every time they answer their phone, or get in the car, or open the refrigerator, or get up from a chair. They can use their breath for intervention anytime they're at a point of high anxiety, and use any of these breathing techniques or others to bring their breath back to a slower pace and bring it deeper into their body and brain. Okay, now we'll move on to thoughts. Once the teen is bringing more oxygen into their brain, they can begin to use their thoughts to lower their anxiety level. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is the treatment of choice for anxiety management and what therapists use most often for counseling with teens. This is because what we think, or our cognitions, directly affect how we feel. This means when we work with our thoughts, we can change our feelings. Anxiety. So I use the story of two runners to illustrate this point. I tell the teen I want them to imagine that this is the hottest day of the year, the hottest time of the day, and there are two runners just finishing up a 26-mile marathon. Both runners are equally hot, sweaty, exhausted, and thirsty. They reach the end of the marathon, and they see in front of them on a table a glass that is half filled with water. The first runner looks at this half-filled glass and says, "Oh, thank goodness there's water. This is great. This is fantastic. I need water right now, and here it is." I ask the teen, "How do you think that runner feels?" I usually get answers like happy, excited, or grateful. I agree. Then I explain that the second runner, very same physical condition of fatigue and thirst, looks at the very same glass of water and says, "Oh no, this is terrible. There's only half a glass of water here. I need about 1,000,000 glasses of water, and this is all there is. This is the worst thing ever." And then I ask the teen, "How do you think this runner feels?" And I usually get answers like angry, disappointed, or sad. Hey. Then we talk about the amazing fact that two people in the very same life situation, very same physical condition, are having completely different experiences of this situation. One runner is happy and excited. The other is angry and disappointed. How is this possible? The answer, of course, that the feeling and their experience is not in the situation. It's in the thoughts they choose. Then we discuss the fact that no one else can choose our thoughts for us. This is something we can work on and choose for ourselves. The good news about this story is that it applies to every single life situation we encounter. We always have the choice of what we're going to think. We also have the choice about how we feel, including the feeling of anxiety. And of course, there are absolutely times when this is easier and when it is very much harder. But it's always possible. And with practice over time, it becomes easier and easier. This is a really empowering story for teens who often feel that they're victims of their feelings and that their anxiety is completely controlling them. Just knowing that there's a possibility of change helps lower their anxiety. Now that we understand the power of our thoughts, I'll explain a few specific techniques that use our thoughts in different ways. These first three techniques involve focusing our thoughts. Visualization really means imagining a mental picture and focusing your attention on that picture. What's important to know here is the fact that our brains don't know the difference between what's really happening and what we imagine is happening. So this means that if a teen is sitting in a classroom, feeling anxious, waiting to take their SAT test, and they're telling themselves they might do really poorly or really mess up, their brain is going to signal the stress hormones to release, and their body is going to tense up, and they're going to begin to feel anxiety. But if that teen in that same situation closes their eyes for a minute, visualizes themselves in their happy place, let's say on vacation, lying on a beach in the sun, their brain will react as if they actually are on the beach, not in the reality of the classroom. It will signal their body to relax, the muscles will lose tension, and their breathing will slow down. This will mean their anxiety releases and they get more oxygen to their brain so they can both choose better thoughts and also do better on the test. On the right side of this slide, you see another example from the Put Your Worries Here book, which prompts the teen to draw or tape a picture of their peaceful place on the page so they can see it, and then they close their eyes and imagine themselves actually there. And I encourage teens to go through their five senses when they do this. Imagine the colors, the fragrances, the textures, the sounds, etc., that they would experience in that place. Next is meditation. Some teens think that meditation involves sitting on a mountaintop in the Himalayas or having to have a religious experience. Meditation can include either of those, but more basically, what it is a brain exercise. The goal of the exercise is to give your brain practice in leaving distraction and coming back to peace. The first step is to choose a peaceful item of focus. Some teens like to imagine something from nature, like a flower garden or a sunset. Some choose a word, such as peace or serenity. Some like to imagine their pets. And some do choose religious or spiritual symbols. It doesn't matter what they choose as long as it makes them feel peaceful. Second step is to sit comfortably and quietly and put their mind on their object of choice. In a few moments, they'll notice their mind has wandered. I have to reiterate over and over that this is a part of meditation. You absolutely cannot stop your mind from wandering. So when it happens, notice it, accept it, and then bring it back to your focus. Third step is just to repeat this process of focusing, wandering, and coming back over and over. As you do this, what I call your brain's focus muscle gets stronger and stronger. I tell teens it's just like your bicep would get stronger and stronger if you were raising a weight and then lowering it and then raising it again. And the great thing about meditation is that it lowers anxiety as you practice, but more importantly, it generalizes. So as that focus muscle gets stronger, it gets easier and easier to leave distraction and come back to peace. Leave anxious thoughts and come back to peace in other life situations, such as when they're sitting at tryouts for the swim team or studying for a test. Our third thought-focusing activity is called mindfulness. Mindfulness means focusing on the present moment without judgment. Anxiety is about the future. When a teen feels their heart racing and chest tightening at the thought of taking an AP physics class, thoughts are in the future, which I remind them right now only exists in their mind. It's just a story they're telling themselves. What exists in reality right now is wherever they are and whatever they're doing at this very moment, which is usually just sitting in my office listening to me talk about mindfulness. So we really work on bringing their focus back to the present moment, where 99% of the time everything is just fine. They can use mindfulness when they are in that AP physics class also. Instead of sitting in the class thinking, oh my gosh, how will I ever do all this homework for this class? They can focus on what the teacher is saying at the moment, the sound of the teacher's voice, the notes they're taking, how the desk chair feels beneath their body, etc. This helps lower their anxiety and also helps them absorb the subject matter better in the class. Mindfulness is also really effective in managing overwhelm, a huge anxiety trigger. We feel overwhelmed when we're thinking about too much at one time. For example, thinking about all the homework we have in one week, every class, as well as every after-school commitment for the whole. Mindfulness brings our thoughts back to only the one homework assignment we're working on, and this lowers our anxiety. Our next slide talks about disruptive thoughts. There are a number of common thought patterns that raise a teen's anxiety and that we want them to help reduce. First is worry. Worry involves ruminating about something in the future and anticipating a negative outcome. Never worry about positive outcomes. Worry is very common and everyone does it, but it's a waste of our time and energy. I tell teens that if worrying helped, I'd have them go home, set a timer every day, and sit and worry for at least 30 minutes. Fact is, worrying about something has never changed an outcome or prevented a negative outcome. What worry does do is drain us and raise our anxiety. Another anxiety-raising thought pattern is overgeneralization. This thinking pattern uses words like always, never, everyone, no one. For example, if a teen is babysitting and has a hard time getting a child to go to sleep, she could think, children never listen to me. This is an overgeneralization. And the next time she's asked to babysit, she gets anxious just thinking about it because she tells herself, children never listen to me. Perfectionistic thoughts will also raise anxiety. A teen who tries to do her art project perfectly will be continually judging herself, never be satisfied, and may even turn it in late because she couldn't get it perfect. This causes her anxiety to go up. I educate teens that research shows that perfectionists are not as successful in life as those people who are satisfied with doing just a really good job. Reason being, perfectionists often never finish tasks because they're never satisfied. When a teen is feeling immobilized by anxious thoughts, one way to help them out of that thinking pattern is by talking about what's the worst that could happen. As an example from the Anxiety Workbook for Teens, this describes a teen named Chris who was so anxious about going to basketball tryouts that he just thought he might not even go. He's not even going to bother to try out because it's too nervous. Dad saw his anxiety and he said to him, "Chris, what's the worst thing that could happen if you try out?" Chris answers, "Well, I guess the worst thing would be if I missed every shot I tried for." Dad says, "Well, let's think about the reality of that. You're a really good basketball player. Right now, you probably make 90% of the shots you try. Even if you did 10% worse because you're under pressure, you'd still make 80%. That's nowhere near missing every shot. And if against the odds the worst did happen, what would you do?" And says, "Well, I guess I'd feel embarrassed and disappointed. And I'd probably come home and mope for a while. And then I'd eat dinner, and then I'd do my homework and watch TV and go to bed. And I'd probably try out again next year." So thinking this situation through made Chris realize that even if the worst happened, he could survive and go on. Instead of staying stuck in his anxiety, his dad gave him a reality check, and his anxiety went. Another really effective technique is breaking things down into smaller steps. When a teen thinks about doing the entire research paper, they get overwhelmed, and their anxiety goes up. If they break that project into smaller steps and think just about choosing the title first, it feels far more manageable, and their anxiety lowers. Finally, the pictures on this slide are also from the Anxiety Workbook for Teens. They illustrate the technique of viewing the bigger picture to work with anxious. Picture on the left, Ryan is feeling anxious because he has to give an oral presentation, and he's afraid he might stumble over his words. Focusing on this one detail raises his anxiety level. Picture on the right, Ryan uses his thoughts to look at the bigger picture instead of the one small detail. He reminds himself that he's well prepared for the presentation, he has good visual aids, already has a solid B in the class, and the teacher likes his work. Focuses on the bigger picture facts, his anxiety goes down because he realizes that even if he does stumble over his words, that's only one small part of his whole presentation. Okay, now let's talk about some ways that teens can work directly with those individual anxiety-provoking thoughts. Anxiety-provoking thinking is actually a mental habit with real corresponding physiological neural patterns in our brain. And we know changing a habit doesn't happen overnight. But the good news is that neuroscience informs us that our brains are plastic, meaning that as long as we're alive, our brains are capable of learning, growing, and changing. And change their thinking habits. In fact, even more readily than we as adults can because they haven't had the habits as long. This is another important fact to share with teens because it empowers them and in turn starts to lower their anxiety already. So the first way teens can start changing these neurological patterns is simply by observing their thoughts. Just by starting to pay attention to their thoughts and notice them, they start loosening that habitual neural connection. Anytime they notice, "Oh, I'm having that anxious thought again," they start to dismantle it. Also, observing thoughts helps us to separate from them. Teens realize, "I am not my thoughts," and "I am not the victim of my thoughts." They are empowered again. After observing that a thought has entered their mind, the teen can then think about how they want to respond to it. I teach them that there are actually options, and we don't have to just accept or run with every thought that comes in. One option is to make the choice of releasing a thought instead of grasping onto it. I tell them to think of their thoughts as clouds floating by in the sky or leaves floating by in a river. They don't have to reach out and grab them. Why? Grasping onto an anxious thought will give it power. There's also the choice to just notice it, release it, and let it go on its way. I also try to help teens understand just because they have a thought doesn't mean it's true. I'll tell a teen that they could have the thought they're an astronaut landing on the moon, and they can place that thought in their head and repeat it over and over, but that doesn't make it true. Likewise, just because they have the thought everyone's laughing at me, it's true. Explain the difference between a feeling and a fact. Good question to ask. Is this a feeling or a fact? Is it a fact that everyone is laughing at me, or is it my feeling? Questioning our thoughts like this can help lower. Another way for a teen to deal with anxious thoughts is to practice thought stopping. This means that when they notice a thought enter their mind, they immediately reject it by either saying stop or some other method that works for them. They might imagine themselves holding up a stop sign to block the thought. One time a child told me he pictured a police officer holding up his hand to block the thought. One woman pictured a red circle with a diagonal red line through it, forbidding the thought to come in. Someone else might physically shake their head a little as if to shake the thoughts out. Each teen has to learn what works best. Another technique is thought exchanging. This involves the teen having a substitute thought ready and waiting in the wings. And when the anxiety-provoking thought comes in, they immediately exchange it for the more relaxing thought that they've rehearsed. If a teen notices the thought, I really messed up this time, they might exchange it for the pre-rehearsed thought, not the end of the world, everyone else I know makes mistakes. And finally, positive affirmations are simply positive thoughts that we tell ourselves. And these are one of the most powerful ways to combat anxiety. Teens can write down their anxious thoughts and then rewrite them with a positive tone, such as changing, I'll never get this right, to I'm getting better and better at this every day. Or positive affirmations can be used for prevention. I encourage teens to start the day with affirmations like, I'm feeling really confident today, or I'm really going to stay connected to my calm today. This sets the tone for their day and for their life in general. Positive affirmations can be repeated at any moment of the day, and the more the better. Now I'd like to mention some specific information about panic attacks because they are so common. Panic attack is simply a short period of very heightened anxiety. Symptoms are often the same as regular anxiety, but just at a heightened level. Diagnostic criteria are to be having 4 out of about 13 symptoms of anxiety, which develop abruptly and peak rapidly within about 10 minutes. Teens can use both cognitive and physical means to manage a panic attack. In general, we want to use our thoughts to normalize our experience, raise our confidence. So we can tell ourselves things like, hey, this is just really high anxiety, I'm not dying. Or, I don't like this feeling, I know it will pass. Or, oh boy, here it comes. Okay, I know what to do. All of these kinds of thoughts will help relieve anxiety rather than make it go even higher. Teens can write down and even rehearse thoughts that will help them personally manage. Teens can also find physical ways to help themselves get regrounded and recentered when they're experiencing a panic attack. These might vary from teen to teen, but it can include things like finding a solid place to sit down if they're shaky or lightheaded, putting on a sweater or blanket if they've got chills, and likewise taking off a sweater or getting a cool drink if they're perspiring. They can also use breathing exercises as we described before, and practice mindfulness by bringing their attention to all the normal things that are going on around them. Oh, there's a bird in that tree. That lady's wearing a green coat, etc. Actually, mindfulness would be a mental technique because they're really using their thoughts to help themselves. Parents and other helping adults can work with the teen to make a list of the things that work best for them. Many of the grounding and self-soothing activities on the next slide could also be on this list. Grounding and self-soothing activities can include anything that helps the teen to feel more. Probably think of some things like this that help you when you're feeling anxious. Maybe you feel better when you get some fresh air or take a walk or spend time gardening. Maybe you go for a run or a bike ride. Maybe you make a cup of tea and call a friend. Maybe you just try to get some alone time. Sometimes teens like hot showers or baths, listening to music, petting their dog or cat. I gave a stress buster presentation at our local high school recently, and two of the most popular soothing activities were using bubble wands and playing with kinetic sand. They also really liked an activity from the Put Your Worries Here book where they would write down their anxious thoughts on paper and then put the paper through a shredder. The kids who did this kept saying how satisfying it felt, and I could see how empowering it was for them. Help your teen brainstorm a list of these activities to have on hand, and then when anxiety rises, they can pull out their list, which could be on their phone, and have a reminder of what works for them and a choice of what they might try at that moment. Some of the most effective techniques involve physical exercise and movement. There is just so much research on how helpful exercise is for anxiety management, as it helps dissipate the stress chemicals like adrenaline from our bodies. It deepens our breathing, and it releases the calming chemicals in our brain. This is what creates the runner's high that many athletes talk about. I encourage teens to use some kind of exercise for prevention on a regular basis. That can be any kind of sport or physical exercise, football to skiing to dancing. Also, relaxation-focused exercises such as yoga and Tai Chi are very effective. Self-expression activities can help relieve anxiety. Drawing, singing, writing, or playing an instrument. One of the most well-researched of these techniques is personal writing or journaling. You can see an example of this on the next slide. I use writing techniques quite often with my clients, and there's a great deal of information on how effective journaling can be for both anxiety and depression, as well as a host of other issues. Journaling can be actually an entire webinar in itself, and there's far too much info to cover today, but I will make one really important point. That is, you don't need to be a good writer to use journaling techniques. I always reiterate to my teens that this is not English class. The goal of journaling is simply to express yourself on paper. So you don't need to think about grammar, spelling, punctuation, organization, or any other composition rules. There's many ways to use journaling to manage anxiety. Free writing and guided journaling are described here, and the left side of this slide shows a combined example of these formats, again from the Put Your Worries Here book. Finally, I just want to mention the fact that nutrition can also affect anxiety. Many people are already aware that caffeine will hype us up, and the tryptophan in Thanksgiving turkey will mellow us out. But this slide, which you can read over yourself, lists a number of additional foods that have been known to affect anxiety levels in one way or another. In conjunction with that, I just mentioned that I was at a seminar earlier this year given by a physician, and it was using nutrition to manage emotional issues. She suggested that she felt that part of the reason we have this extreme rise in anxiety in our society today, especially in teens, very likely be linked to the increased intake of coffee, soda, and energy drinks. So these effects will vary from person to person, but it is another area that you can explore with your teen and experiment with making dietary alterations to help with managing anxiety. I'm going to end today by talking a little bit about how you as an adult can assist the anxious teen in your life. I want to start by making the point that I always tell parents and other helping adults. That is that the best thing you can do for a child or a teen is to be healthy yourself. I had a professor in graduate school who would stand at the front of the class and challenge us over and over again by asking, "Who cares for the caregiver?" She really wanted to drive home the point that if we're not caring for ourselves or don't have support ourselves, we can't be of help to anyone else either. So make sure that you're getting support and you're getting your own needs met as you try to help your teens. Another important point is the significance of modeling, which I mentioned earlier. So many parents tell me they don't want their child or their teen to know that they have anxiety or sadness or see them struggle. And while we don't want to scare our kids by letting them think we have problems that are too big for us to handle or that we're in danger, we really can do them a service by letting them know that we are human and just like them, we may struggle with our own emotions. The important fact we want to add to this, however, is that we know ways to manage our feelings. This gives them confidence that feelings don't have to be overwhelming or debilitating, and it helps them learn how to manage their own feelings. So, the next time you're feeling anxious at breakfast because you have to make a presentation at work, you can reflect this out loud. Wow, my anxiety level is really up to an 8 right now. I can feel my heart racing when I think about this presentation this morning. You know what? I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to take a few deep breaths right now and remind myself that I know the material backward and forward. And I've got some nature music I'm going to listen to in the car on the way to work. I know this will help calm me down, and it will all turn out fine. Okay, now I'm going to go over some treatment options. We often like to start with the least invasive form of help. If their anxiety isn't debilitating, a teen could start with self-help. This might mean reading self-help books or watching videos on anxiety management. It might mean working through a workbook or a guided journal, such as those I've mentioned today. A teen might also try a support group. Many schools have in-school support groups run by the school social worker or psychologist that meet on a regular basis and help teens learn how to manage anxiety. Or if a teen is more comfortable one-on-one, they might also meet with a school social worker individually for personal meetings. This might mean a set meeting every week or as needed. Sometimes a social worker will allow the teen to get a pass to come to his or her office during the school day if they're feeling highly anxious or having a panic attack. This will vary from school to school, so you have to check with your own resources. The benefit of self-help methods is that they're so convenient. However, convenience shouldn't be the final factor in determining treatment. If self-help isn't helping, then it's time for professional help. As I said earlier, the treatment of choice for anxiety is cognitive behavioral therapy within the context of individual psychotherapy. Families should look for a therapist who has experience treating anxiety and anxiety disorders. Individual therapy isn't enough by itself. There's the option of adding medication, which would require meeting with a psychiatrist. Primary care physicians can also prescribe psychotropic medications, but I think if it's at all possible, it's usually best to go with someone who's been specially trained in these kinds of meds and in emotional disorders. Next, if the combination of psychotherapy and medication is still not helping enough, a higher level of care might be warranted, such as an individualized outpatient program where the teen attends a few hours of both group and individual therapy, maybe 2 or more days a week at a facility or hospital that provides this. Finally, in extreme cases, as when the patient's life is in danger, inpatient hospitalization might be necessary. On the right side of this slide, you'll see the acronym SEEM, which the FFDA initiated. So I'm going to let Valerie tell you about that and let her continue from here.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, and you already went over so well things about exercise and eating and how they can be part of a holistic approach to dealing with an anxiety disorder. But just want to reiterate mindfulness and sleep, sleep, sleep. How many teens do you know who actually sleep their 8 to 10 hours a night? And how many are not falling asleep to the glare of a screen? I don't know many teens who are doing either of those things, so it's just important to reiterate that good sleep hygiene could do so much to help. Lisa already talked about support groups and some resources that schools can offer. So self-help and support groups are also really important. Support groups for you as the parent, also support groups for the teens. It's really helpful to know that you're not alone in struggling with some of these issues. So if you can find peers for yourself and peers for your teens to talk to, it can really help with managing anxiety in a personal way. We should also discuss safety concerns. To determine the best treatment options for your teen, you first need to assess their needs and address any safety concerns. So let's just start with the most extreme. If they are self-injuring and their injuries are to the point where they need urgent medical attention, of course you're going to want to handle that first before looking for therapy and other interventions. Likewise, if the teen has expressed any suicidal ideation, if you believe that they want to harm themselves and die, you can ask the question. It will not put the idea of suicide in their brains. Just ask them, are you thinking of hurting yourself to the point where you don't want to be here? Are you thinking of taking your own life? And open up a dialogue there. Of course, if they have access to lethal means or if they have a suicide plan, you need to get them help immediately. So aside from those emergency situations, you can start by observing what you see that the teen is experiencing, and if there are some safety concerns, let's say you see evidence of self-injury on their body, wait until you are in private. It's not a time to talk to them in front of other family members or when you're out in public. Find a private moment, a private time, and although you might be panicking on the inside, just calmly talk to them and ask some respectfully curious questions, open-ended questions as well, to really gauge where they are and what is motivating this self-harm. Engage them in identifying next steps, and we're going to talk about that a little more on the next slide. And, of course, try to get that formal evaluation from a mental health clinician to see if anxiety is the only issue or if there are other mental health issues at play. So on this slide, you'll see some resources that you can give directly to your teens to the teens in your life. Encourage them, and we encourage you as well to put these numbers in their phones ahead of time. They may not need them in the moment, but you never know when they or a friend needs to reach out to somebody for emergency help. So, of course, 911 for immediate emergencies, but they can also text the crisis text line. If they're a part of the LGBTQ community, they can contact the Trevor Project that has a hotline and some other resources. There's also a trans lifeline for teens who may identify as trans to be able to contact if they need crisis support. So give these numbers to the teens. If they say, I don't need it, say you may need it one day or you may need it for a friend, and make sure that you have the numbers as well. One thing we do know is that eventually teens who have anxiety will become adults who may have anxiety, and so they will eventually be responsible for their own care. So you can encourage buy-in and teach advocacy skills by involving your teen in the treatment planning process as much as possible in these early stages of their life. Now, this may be more difficult for a teen who is experiencing extreme anxiety or extreme depression and having trouble just getting out of bed. So you can start them out easy by giving them some healthy options and making it simple for them. So, for example, if you do want them to reference some self-help materials, you pick out 2 or 3 that you know are good, that you know are going to be helpful for them, and say, out of these 2, which one do you like better? Which one do you think you want to read, or which one do you want to use? And also, if they are going to see a therapist, and if you have already found a few that accept your insurance or otherwise meet your criteria, have the teen meet with them and say, who do you like best? Who do you think will be the most helpful for you in addressing your anxiety? These are small steps that they can take to start involving them so that they're part of the decision-making process and they know how to handle their own care for the future. So if you are interested in some of the materials that Lisa has mentioned, we have them on the slide here. She mentioned 2 books in specific. The first was the Anxiety Workbook for Teens. It is an international bestseller and offers more than 40 evidence-based activities which help teens understand their own anxiety patterns and teach practical coping skills, such as the ones that we heard today. The second book, as you can see, is Put Your Worries Here. It is the first in an innovative new series that, because of its unique and engaging format, provides therapy that doesn't look like therapy. Sometimes we have to trick our teens into doing things, unfortunately, but this is a great way of doing it. There are 100 creative prompts that are specifically designed to help teens release anxiety in the moment. And again, it teaches some coping skills. So this is a great resource for teens that may be hesitant at this stage to seek outside help. It's also great for teens who may just enjoy creativity and want to have a book with their the ideas they've had jotted down ready to go if anxiety flares. I'm also going to mention that the second guided journal in this series, which is called Put Your Feelings Here, a creative DBT journal for teens with intense emotions, that will also help with anxiety, and it will be released in January 2020. Is that right, Lisa?
Yes,
January
that's it.
2020? Great. So you can pre-order that on Amazon, and you can also find all these resources at Lisa's website. The URL is listed there. And the exciting news, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that Lisa generously gave us 2 of each of these books to give away. So if you fill out the online evaluation of our program after today, you will be entered to win one of these 4 books. We will have 4 winners, so make sure you fill out our evaluation and you may get one of these excellent resources. So before I talk about Families for Depression Awareness, I want to remind you that we are going to get to your questions at the end. So if you have questions about anything that Lisa presented on, or maybe just something else that's going on with teens and anxiety, please continue to submit these questions. As soon as I finish talking about Families for Depression Awareness, we will get you to your questions. So I'm going to do this as quickly as I can, and then we will go right into question and answer. So our mission at Families for Depression Awareness is to help families recognize and cope with depression and bipolar disorder to get people well and prevent suicides. We are a national nonprofit organization, and we operate under the philosophy that depression and bipolar disorder affect the whole family. If dad has depression, perhaps mom has to take on extra responsibilities at home. The kids know that something's wrong, but they really don't understand what's going on. And so you really have to look at these as issues, and anxiety is included in this, as issues that affect the whole family, and the whole family needs resources. So we have a great program on teen depression. This anxiety webinar is actually part of our overall teen depression, teen mental health program. We've trained thousands of people since we launched, and we have lots of resources regarding teens and mental health. We also have these excellent teen speakers that tell their stories of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder to their peers. If you live in Massachusetts, if your community is in Massachusetts, or you're from an MA school, you can contact Devin to find out how to bring these teen speakers to your school. We also have them on Instagram, so you can find them there, and they also tell their stories on video. So if you don't live in Massachusetts, you can still hear their stories. Our website is the hub of all of our resources, so some of you may have gone directly to the website in order to register today, but if you have not, visit familyaware.org and you will see information about a variety of things, from our free webinars like the one we're on this evening, to stories and interviews with real people and real experts on a variety of topics. You can find them all on our website. We also offer some great web tools, such as our mental health family tree, our depression wellness analyzer, and our depression and bipolar tests, which are based on the PHQ-9 and the MDQ, which are both very reliable sources of being able to indicate if somebody may be at risk for depression or bipolar disorder. We also have some great publications, including, I'm going to highlight our Handbook for Caregivers. That's the first image on this slide on the left. It's just came out this year. It's our magnum opus, and it goes over a little bit of a lot of different topics that have to do with caregiving for someone who has a mood disorder. We are also very, very excited to offer custom teen resource cards. These are little folding cards that can fit in a teen's wallet or in their phone case, and it offers great tips for them. It also has some of the phone resources that we mentioned before, and you can customize them. If you live in a town, if you work for a health department or a school and you want resource cards, you can order these and customize them with your logo and two phone numbers for local resources for your community. So we encourage you to go to our website and read about that. I want to give a special thank you, remind you all to send your questions as I do this. Thank you right now. Thank you, Lisa, for your great information. And thank you to our Teen Depression Program funders. Without them, we would not be able to do all that we do, and they allow us to be able to give this content for free. George Harrington Trust, Middlesex Savings Charitable Foundation, Rebecca Pomeroy Foundation, Thomas Anthony Pappas Charitable Foundation, Adelaide Breed Baird Foundation, Bennett Family Foundation, John Donnelly Trust, Sumerian Foundation, Rhyme and Reason Fund, and of course, big thank you to listeners like you who give individual gifts, generous contributions in order to support our work. If this work is meaningful to you, you can make a donation tax deductible at familyaware.org. And I am done with my part, and we're going to go directly to question and answer. And Lisa, we're going to start out with a question that came in by somebody who registered for the webinar and submitted this ahead of time. And this is a question about schools. The person asks, what kinds of techniques, so we're thinking about the techniques that you mentioned tonight, what kinds of techniques can be used in the classroom or in places where the teen doesn't have privacy? So if they're having a panic attack, let's say in class, or their anxiety is just rising, what are some of the go-to things that you would tell them to do that wouldn't maybe embarrass them or make them feel like they're different than their peers, but a way to handle their anxiety right there when they're in the classroom?
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. Good question. And the first thing actually that comes to mind is that also just to let parents and other helping adults be aware that if you do connect with your school social worker or psychologist or counselor, they can often let teachers know that the student, has some anxiety issues going on, and they let the teachers know privately, so it's not, spread around the school, but so that if the student does seem to be anxious in class or if they seem to be having a hard time, the teacher understands that. And I have had clients who get permission to get up and leave the room if they feel a full-blown panic attack coming on. And it doesn't have to be a big production. It can be done very subtly. Sometimes the teacher, understanding this, can make sure that the teen is in a seat that's close to the door, and it's done respectfully and just subtly, so that if the anxiety gets really high, the teen knows that they do have the option of just standing up and walking out of the room. Sometimes just knowing that they have that option can keep the anxiety from going into a full-blown panic attack because they don't feel trapped. And one of the biggest things that we worry about with a panic attack is, somebody's going to see me and I'm going to be embarrassed and it's going to get too big. And if they know that they can get up if they need to, that actually helps keep their anxiety lower. So just throwing that out there too, if you talk with your school staff. But to the point of if there's something going on and the teen feels they can manage it themselves but doesn't want to make a big scene in front of people, what we talked about today was your breath and your thoughts. Nobody sees those. So a teen, if they're armed with those tools already, if they've been educated about them and they know the ones that work for them, they can very easily take one conscious breath, or they can imagine that balloon inflating and deflating in their abdomen, and nobody has to know that they're doing that. The same thing with their thoughts. They can use that technique. They can find the things that work for them. Maybe they just start using some of those positive affirmations. Okay, I know this is just anxiety. I can take this breath and it's going to calm me down. I know, just reaffirming to themselves that they can handle this, or using the thought-stopping technique. So really the breath and the thoughts are the go-tos for if you're in public or you don't have privacy.
Excellent. We have a question that was submitted live, and we also got questions about this ahead of time about the correlation between screen time and anxiety. Can you speak on that a little bit? If there is a correlation, what it
I
could be?
can,
Yeah.
yes, and I can just speak on it a little bit, but because I don't know the exact statistics, but yes, there is a correlation between screen time and anxiety, and part of that we know is due to the social scrutiny that kids are under all the time now, practically 24/7 if they're carrying their phone with them, because of the social media and the pressure to live up to what they see online, to what they see on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, and they compare themselves. And nobody puts their worst moments up on the internet. They put their highlight reel. And so if a teen is looking at someone else's highlight reel and they're thinking about their own outtakes, the comparison is crazy and they feel terrible, and that raises their anxiety. There was also a comment made in one of the articles I read about the fact that a teen can be, because of the phone and the immediate access to the internet and the socials and the screens, a teen can be sitting next to their parents on the couch and being bullied, and nobody would even know
Yeah.
it. And so that in itself, I mean, technology, we're thankful for technology because what we're doing right now is because of technology. But we also really have to pay attention and be careful, and as parents, monitor and limit what our teens are doing and what our kids are doing, because it can get way out of hand and really be debilitating with anxiety and depression.
Absolutely. So there is a question from a listener who wonders what is the timeline, if there can be one, with anxiety going away, or how long does it take? When does it get better with treatment? And can you speak on that a little bit?
Yes, it's a really common question. I think everyone who comes in my office says, well, how long will this take for me to get rid of it? And I wish there was a real answer to that. Unfortunately, it really varies from person to person. It depends on how high the anxiety is or how pervasive the anxiety is that we're starting with. And it depends on the individual. Is this individual going to be able to use a few coping skills and go, oh, that breathing thing really helps me a lot. My anxiety's down like by 50%. Somebody else might try those same breathing techniques and say, sometimes people actually say, oh, the breathing exercises make me more anxious. So everybody's different. But sometimes it just takes longer. If there's a chemical imbalance, it can take longer. And I usually talk to people in my office and say, we're going to try what we can with our CBT techniques and our thinking and our breathing and nutrition and stuff. And then if none of those work, we'll try medication. And there's nothing wrong with that. But let's see what we can do first. And sometimes we can just get by with the CBT, and sometimes we have to go to medication. And unfortunately, there's just not a pat answer for that. It depends so much on where this is all coming from. If it's from one incident, someone had a unpleasant experience and they really are trying to avoid those same experiences now, we can work on helping them manage that fear or phobia. But if they have social anxiety and generalized anxiety and OCD or if they have a history of being bullied, or if there's a lot more there, and or if their family has a history of anxiety, depression, addictions, that genetic component can also make things harder. So I always hate to give that answer, but we just don't know. It just depends on, and also how committed, if they're going to come to therapy once a month and just kind of give it a shot, or if they're really going to be committed to working and trying these things out, and that can make a difference too.
So there are a couple of questions around teens who have high expectations of themselves. You touched on perfectionism earlier, and I know there have been a couple of very high profile suicides of teens who were high achievers, who their depression or their anxiety or both just became so overwhelming that they took their lives. So one parent wants to know, how do you support a teen who has set too high expectations for herself or himself, which is the main cause of their anxiety?
Yeah, really good question. And I will say, just as a point of information, most of the teens that I work with anxiety are the high achievers. They're the kids that are good at a lot of stuff and doing a lot of stuff and pushing themselves. And part of this answer, I think this requires working both on perfectionism and that getting out of that trap. And again, one of the things that can be really helpful is to educate the teen on that fact that perfectionists don't achieve as much, actually, um, because that kind of throws their system off a little bit. And they're like, oh, really? So I'm actually working against myself if I'm trying to do it better, 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 better. But also self-esteem is a huge part of what can fuel perfectionism. Um, Self-esteem is often an underlying cause for that. Accepting ourselves just as we are, which is healthy self-esteem, goes a long way in helping kids to let go of perfectionism and overly high expectations. It might also take some counseling to help them understand what drives those expectations to begin with. They might need to find out why they have those expectations before they can feel safe enough to let go of them or dismantle them. But sometimes people aren't even aware of why they have this thinking pattern in place, why I have to be so much better. And a lot of kids, I'll talk to the parents and I'll talk to the kids, and the parents are saying, we're not telling her she has to have straight A's or be in honors classes. She's doing it to herself, or he's doing it to himself. And this is true. And sometimes parents do put expectations on us, but it can also just be the kid themselves. And this comes from what they're telling themselves about what they need to do to feel good enough. And they can get messages from society, they can get messages from their family, they can get messages from peers, they can get plenty of messages from the internet. Um, we are fortunate to live in a culture where so much success and achievement is possible, and that's a wonderful thing. At the same time, that can just put a lot of pressure on kids today. Combining that with the fact that kids who want to go to college are not just competing with the kids in their town or their state or their country, but there's a global competition now for spots in universities. And they know this, and this puts pressure on. So, combination of a lot of those things. And how do you support your teen? You help educate them and try and look to see what is driving their high expectations and see if they can get to the point where they can dismantle. Um, I I worked with a middle school child one time who was under so much pressure and had so many expectations on herself, and she said, I'm trying so hard to get good grades so that I can get in the AP classes in high school so that I could get into the best college, and then I need to get this really good job. And she goes, but then as soon as I do that, I'm probably going to die of cancer.
Oh
And I
my
just thought,
gosh.
oh my God, I know, but this is this is where a lot of kids' minds are. This is a middle school
Yeah.
kid. So if we find that if we find that thought pattern, we can start working with that. Um, or it's just someone who says, "Well, I have to be as good as so and so," or "My older sister is so much smarter, prettier, more talented, more athletic than me," and the messages don't have to come from anywhere outside them. They can just come from themselves. But why aren't I good enough just being me? And I work a lot with kids trying to just accept their authentic self and understand that that's where they're going to find the most success. So, Um,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to find what's driving that.
Absolutely. So we have time for one more question, and I'm going to combine again a couple that we got ahead of time and one that we have um, that just came in around teens that have anxiety that's a little bit more resistant, or the teen is resistant to finding coping skills and maybe some the treatment that they're currently using isn't working. So perhaps you can touch on maybe parental expectations and these more extreme cases of anxiety in teens. So one of the questions was, what do I do when typical methods of anxiety management don't work for my child? I can't calm her brain. It doesn't work, and we are already on medication. This other question is, what do you do with a teen who is resistant to utilizing coping and self-soothing skills or techniques? So what are some of the things you can do in these more extreme cases? And
Good
maybe just offer
question.
some hope to the parents or the loved ones in this situation.
Yeah, the first question I think about, my mind goes to a DBT program. So DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a very effective treatment base, and it's rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy, but it goes beyond that. And a lot of therapists and clinics teach DBT skills. But there are actually, if you're talking about a child who's tried all the techniques and they're already on meds, a certified DBT program can be very helpful. The certified programs are those where all the therapists have gone through a particular training, they're all certified, and they have a 4-point plan. One is, and this involves a commitment, a huge commitment, but I've seen it help a lot, and that is the teen, or it's for adults too, goes to individual therapy once a week. They also go to a class, a skills class, once a week. So, and in the individual therapy, the therapist helps them apply that skill. What happened this week? What's going on? And how could you use that skill? Also, there's a 24/7 hotline, a phone number that these kids can call if they're stuck, if they're in crisis, whatever. And the fourth tenet is that the therapists involved in the program all consult with each other. So you actually have a team helping you. And you have to make, in the certified programs, you have to make a 6 to 12 month commitment to the program. And it is a big commitment, but I've seen it work very, very well with kids, teens, and adults that where other things haven't worked. Um, and then as far as the teen who's tried all the techniques and is resistant to using them, I don't know if that means they're not working or if they just don't want to be bothered doing that. And yeah, that then when there's not the motivation to do it, it can be even harder. So we always say we have to find what works for you. So if this kid will go to therapy and we'll get a therapist that can help them find something, sometimes none of the technique works, but this kid is a great songwriter, or they write plays, or they're in theater, or they're like stage crew, or there's something that they're passionate about. And there's ways that we can use those passions to help them ground and center themselves. And I'd have to know more about the individual teen themselves, but there's always more things to try, I feel. And sometimes, I will refer someone out, maybe to a different therapist or a different technique or a different method, because this might help. Maybe I've just run out of my solutions. Another thing that comes to mind, I know we're running out of time, but wilderness therapy can be very effective. I have a colleague who teaches and runs wilderness therapy programs, which can run from a half a day to a week, and it's almost like an outward bound kind of a situation, but local and less expensive. And kids go kayaking or hiking or do a lot of outdoor activities. And sometimes that can help kids where other things couldn't. So that's an idea too.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was wonderful. We got more clarification on some of the issues that we talked about in the slide content, and we were able to address some of your questions out there in the audience. So thank you again, Lisa, and thank you to everyone who's been on the call. Just want to remind you to take our online survey, which should pop up once this webinar ends, so that you can be eligible to win one of Lisa's free books. Well, the books aren't free, but we have free copies. And if you are a family that really needs to come up with an action plan on how to address your teen's anxiety, you can check out familyware.org/action plan for more information on that. And just in general, go on our website and see all the tools and resources that we have there. Thank you so much for participating. If you have more questions, you can email them to us. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Valerie.